Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Hey, it's Tandy, your host for Ag Matters Radio, and I'm really looking forward to today's show. We're going to be talking with Nick Stark from Stark Custom Services. Nick is a mobile slaughter. What is it called? A mobile slaughter house? What would it be called?
Mobile slaughter unit is kind of the industry name,
Okay,
or a
perfect.
slaughter truck.
Okay, perfect. I guess I should have thought that through. Thanks, Nick. All right, well, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, take us back to the very beginning. What made you want to start a mobile slaughter truck?
Well, I got initially my first exposure to mobile slaughter and just butcher work in general. I worked at a shop up here called Linden Meat. It's not in operation anymore, but that's originally where I got, my foundation for my education from, going out to farms, doing the mobile kill to sausage making in the shops and whatnot. And once that shop shut down, I still did mobile slaughter just on the side, here and there, particularly during the busy season. But starting last year, once the plant in Palmer kind of, went through its cycle of shutting down again, I kind of made the leap to go full time and get a mobile unit fabricated and start servicing kind of all of Alaska year round.
You service all of Alaska. So tell me about that. I assume you're just on the road system?
Yep, road system. I mean, based in Matsu Valley, that's where a lot of the livestock are. But service Kenai Peninsula up into the interior. Obviously, I book those clients kind of in a bundle. That way, I'm not doing long travels for just one or two animals. But yeah, we service anywhere on the road system year round.
Well, that's incredible. That's great. And what kinds of animals do you typically manage?
Mostly, I'd say beef and hogs. That's kind of the main bunch up here. Though there are sheep and lamb on occasion, and a few exotics, yaks and whatnot. But it's mostly cattle and pork up here.
Okay, all right. And what's involved in the slaughter process? Obviously the kill, but then what else do you do? What does the customer get in the end?
Well, what we offer is bumper to bumper service. We come directly to the farm, carry out the coal, transport all byproducts, head, hide, and guts, and then we transport to whatever processor the farmer or customers of the farmer or homesteaders are want their animals to. Yeah, essentially what we do.
All right. Well, that's perfect. And are you usually booked out pretty far or
But definitely in the fall months, it can be pretty wild. This time of year it's a little bit slower, but October's, a lot of the stuff up here is grass fed, so they have to go, the beef have to go through a summer on pasture, and so it all kind of tends to happen at once. So October is a very busy month. I encourage people who have a good idea of when they're going to be finished out to just get on the books. You cannot get on the books too early. I have people right now that are on the books 3 months from now, not because I'm booked out for 3 months, but they have a good idea of when their animals will be ready. And when you're particularly more rural, out down the Kenai Peninsula or up north, it helps me and the processors that I deliver to kind of have a idea of when we're coming. That way I can book other people in that area and kind of service as many people in that general location at one time as possible.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so especially if you're not in the Matsu Valley, make sure you book in plenty of advance time because I'm sure you just have time slots that you go to those outlying areas for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, if I have 10 homesteaders down the Kenai, each have 5 animals. It's the month of August. I'm like, all right, I'll book 3-4 days, and we'll get the 55 animals done and transported, and that way I'm not making lots of trips.
That makes sense. How long does it take for you? Like if someone has a cow that they need done, how from the time you get there, how long is the process?
Well, typically, if it's a farm I haven't been to, saying hello to the farmer, I request that the animals be accessible via the truck. But I mean, beef, if it's one or two, I can work quite fast. But if it's 10 or more, you tend to pace yourself. But it's, let's say, a 15-minute process for beef before it's about ready to go in the truck. So It's not too long. It's the travel and the transport and all that adds up to a the clean down and the resanitization of the truck and all that kind of adds to the process. So
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Those are good and important steps for sure.
yeah.
So, what does a person need to do? Let's say I called you and said I have a beef and two pigs that I would like to have done. What do we need to do to be ready for you?
Well, for the most part, I'd say the mobile, having a mobile operation, it's a lot less hassle and headache and stress for the farmer and for the animals. You're not having to truck and trailer your animals across the state, and they're not getting exposed to unfamiliar, locations. So all you really got to do is book, if you have, your beef or your hogs, book with your processor that you choose or that your customers choose. Just make sure they're available. Then you just call us up 907-521-6242 and we'll put you on the books. And that's really all you have to do. I do ask that the animals be, like I say, accessible to the truck. Some of these farms are big, 40 plus acres, and if beef are completely free range, it can make it difficult. I like to park the truck, and then the truck doesn't move at that point until we're ready to leave the farm.
Okay. So they don't need to have been off their feet or anything like that. They're just living their normal life right up till you get there.
If they can cut feed the night before, it's nice. I can work around it, but cutting feed the night before is preferable on my part. Giving them good access to water until the morning of is pretty important just for the skinning process. A dehydrated animal is a little more difficult to skin, so we accommodate the best we can. Some situations are different.
Right. And what do you take the things away that the folks don't want? Like if I know we're just getting ready to have a cow done, and I asked for all the
Mhm.
things. I want, the pancreas, I want it all. But I didn't ask for the stomach and stuff. Where does that stuff go? Do you take that away, or does that just go somewhere on our property, or
Yeah, that all gets disposed of, and sometimes I just dump it. I got a hole on my property that I'll dispose it to, or sometimes dog mushers or trappers want byproducts. So yeah, if there's anything extra out of the animals that the homesteaders or customers want, I mean, it's their animals. They can have it all if they really want for compost. But typically, people are pretty appreciative to I show up, their animals are there, and then I'm gone. It's as if there's nothing left over. So most
sure?
of the time I am disposing of all that byproduct.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So in your experience by going to homesteads, is there any mistakes that you've seen that people make that you think, it's not someone being unethical, but just simply not knowing? Like for instance, you said it's best if they're hydrated for skinning. Are there any other
Hmm.
things that you can think of that from your perspective you always wish that the homesteader knew?
As far as my process goes, or just the animal's well-being, you mentioned
Well,
ethics.
I guess kind of both. And again, I don't mean like an ethical thing, but just, especially when you're just learning, you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm more asking from a homesteader standpoint, what do you ever see that you think, man, I if they knew this, they'd have a much better animal, or it would make my process easier if they knew this.
Definitely penning up the animals, not waiting until I get there. I'd like to, when I show up, about 10-15 minutes to get everything unloaded on the truck and equipment set up. At that point, I'd like to be what we call knocking, the euthanasia process. I like to get that underway. So having the animals, they don't got to be in a squeeze chute or anything like that. They can be in, a nice big open pen. But when they're out in the back 40 and we got to go looking for them, it makes the process very long. Ultimately, if it was like that everywhere, the price of the service would go up too because it would take all day. Definitely it's nice to not have animals penned up that are not going to the processor just to keep, stress down. Yeah, that's really the main things.
So when you get there, it's not so let me just kind of recap. So from
Hmm.
your process, it's best if the best case scenario, the animal hasn't been fed since the evening prior, but it has had access to water until that morning. And then
Yep.
it's also best if it's pinned up, but pinned up only by itself or only with other animals that are also going to be taken care of that day. And the rest of the animals are not in that same pen area. And then that pen needs to be accessible to, your truck. So it's nice if that, the pen also isn't in the back 40, but it's closest to you and likely the barn or whatever the structure is right there. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. As long as I get my truck to it, the truck's pretty capable of going off the beaten path because some of these farms are, I mean, on mountaintops or down down trails that we call roads, but they're not really roads. So
We have a lot of those.
yeah, as long as I get as long as I can get the truck to the pen or to the animals, or if there's a big tractor, that we can bring them over to once they've been euthanized. Yeah, there is a learning curve. Customer education, and when I go to a new farm, at the end of it, pretty much every time there's just a sigh of relief. They kind of realize how easy it is. There's not much required on their part other than having their animals ready. One thing I would say is if there's 10 beef going and 5 of the customers want them delivered to processor A, the other 5 want them to processor B, letting me know that ahead of time, because I will in transport arrive at processor A first. So the first animal's in or the last one's out when unloading. So a few things like that, and any unique requests like customer pickups where they're going to come directly to farm and just pick up the hanging halves of beef or hanging quarters, letting me know that way I can time that, time the flow of my operation. So the customers aren't waiting on me. I'm not waiting on the customers. We can just kind of keep the process going.
Right, right. That makes sense. Have you
Mm-hmm.
processed any unusual animals up here?
Unusual animals. I've seen some unique ones. I've seen, 3-legged animals. I've seen
Oh, wow.
one time down at Point Mac, I saw a beef that had 2 legs growing out of its head. It was
Oh,
very strange. It was a calf, and I think it's actually more common than even I know about. But it's the only one I've seen. It was a goofy sight. Just 2 little legs, and rather than ears, it just had hooves hanging. So, yeah, you see some unique things, and you see a lot of really, really cool, unique things every day. That I go out. It's like a field trip for me, particularly going to farms I haven't been to, just seeing the ingenuity. How people, Alaska will chew you up and spit you out. So you got to work with the land, and seeing all the different unique ways that homesteaders and farmers have done that it's pretty neat.
that's true. Do you have any particular stories of that you can think of that you just thought, wow, that was really smart. People should know that.
Nothing that comes to the head. Just the ingenuity. Some really smart people up here, and the way they've reused materials, built bridges. I mean, you name it. Trying to keep cattle and hogs in good shape through the winters. It's pretty. I can't give you an exact example, but
No,
there's plenty of it.
that's okay. That's okay. I remember when we got our first cow, it was back when they were giving away the little bull calves at Point McKenzie. Well, they weren't giving them away, they were $25 at Point McKenzie. And there was a farm that was getting ready to cull all the ones that nobody wanted. And so I called my husband, and I remember I was in town, and I said, they have baby calves at Point McKenzie. They're only $25. Let's raise a cow. I said, I'm gonna go get a couple. And he said,
Mhm.
Tandy, we don't have a barn and we don't have any fences. And I said, but that's okay, because I won't be home for a couple hours. That gives you all sorts of time. So as if as though he didn't have anything going on. Obviously, my husband is a very patient and kind human. And
Yep.
so sure enough, I brought home 4 of those baby calves, and he just took where, he kind of went with the trees and took some 2x4s and just built a fence around the tree. So it was, just whatever shape, because he didn't have time to build a fence, because here I came with these cows.
Yeah.
And we built a little lean-to, and obviously now we have a barn and fences and all that. But I think with Alaskans too, it's sometimes about opportunity. When the opportunity strikes,
Yep.
you jump in and you kind of figure it out as you go. And that's part of the reason I kind of love this lifestyle, is because it is always a challenge. Sometimes it's a blessing and a burden all at once.
Yeah.
Because
No, yeah, it's definitely jumping in. Well, no matter what you do, whether it's homesteading, starting a business, buying a house, remodeling a house. I mean, you just got, at the end of the day, you can prepare all you want, but you just got to go for it. And I see there's a really big movement now with kind of micro homestead lifestyle. A lot of people getting 5, 10 acres, and raising a few hogs or a beef or two. And so servicing those people, I get to see a lot of people their first year. It's by the end of it, they're like, oh man, I did not know it was gonna. I didn't know those hogs were gonna break out twice a week. I didn't know, and so there's a learning curve with everything, and it's fun to see.
It is. The other piece that I think is neat about Alaskans is the amount of mentorship out there. People are so willing
Yep,
to share what they know, and that kind of makes the community itself stronger too when
yep,
you can, the Alaska Farm and Food Facebook page is invaluable for that kind of thing. All you If you have a question, half the time, your questions never come during the day, so it's 1 in the morning and you have a sick calf or whatever, and oftentimes you can do a search and get some good ideas of help
yep.
that people have posted. And I just think that's neat about the Alaskan spirit, and I think it's pretty unique with how people
Yeah,
are. So
yeah. It is a very unique place. I love it up here, and yeah, social media completely changes the way we can communicate with each other, and yeah, mentorship, and then marketing your animals or your produce too. I mean, there's tons of challenges to trying to raise livestock or grow produce up here, but it's never been easier than it is right now, even with all the little uphill battles that exist.
well, maybe uphill battles this week are not good because every uphill is solid ice, but
Yep. Yep, I agree.
but maybe in a normal week. That's,
Yep.
oh man. Well, so I guess I want to go back to the beginning for just a quick second,
Mhm.
because this is a question that I always think. So we are homesteaders, and we raise, or consider ourselves, I guess, homesteaders, and we raise
Mhm.
mostly our own chickens right now. We used to raise our beef and our pigs, and then our kids got older, and Gene and I just wanted to kind of a little break, and we're slowly getting back into it. But we do raise our own meat chickens. But meat chickens are easy because they're so obnoxious. There's so many of them. It's hard to, you don't
Mhm.
get, and you don't have them for very long. So you don't really get attached to them. I actually, as much, cows are probably my favorite animal, but I didn't have a problem getting rid of our cows because they were steers, and steers between a year and a half and 2 years old just get obnoxious. And so
Mhm.
I appreciated that, because I always named them, and all that, and we bottle fed them always. How did you get started in the actual slaughtering part? And how do you advise anyone on how to? Sometimes it's hard to part with these animals. What are your kind of thoughts on that? And I'm sure it's not easy for you too, except that you realize that this is for a greater good, right?
Yeah. So I'll say, my thoughts on that. I started out, my late teens is when I started working at Linden Meats. I got exposed to, the slaughter of domestics. But before that, I was a big hunter. So it wasn't new to me, killing animals. But when I first got exposed to the slaughter side, it kind of made my stomach churn a little bit, because
Hmm.
I always viewed, fair chase. That's the mindset that I came from, was hiking up mountains, trying to find a goat, trying to find a bear.
Yeah.
And this was just a little bit different. They're in a pen. And so it took some adjustment for me to see, these animals' purpose, and now providing a service. I see it more as a service. And I've done it for years now. I couldn't give you a count on how many animals I've processed, but going through it, there was times where I felt sad,
Yeah.
felt like I didn't want to do it. But ultimately, now where I'm at with it is just approaching it with gratitude.
Hmm.
These animals are feeding people. They're feeding my family too, through offering the service. So coming at it from that standpoint, you can really set those other emotions aside if you just look at it from a stance of gratitude.
Well, that's very true. And also, we've all heard stories. If you're in this world for very long, you hear stories of where kind of the dispatch goes bad. And
Hmm.
that's where having a professional come in, if you're not super confident, like the service that you provide is a good one, because it helps folks who maybe aren't ready for that piece of it, to take care of that side of things. And
Yep.
then, we can still enjoy our homegrown hamburger, but we don't have to look it in the eye, in that process.
Yep. Yeah, and having a good experience helps with that. Having a good understanding of animal anatomy. It's I can say that the euthanasia process, it's instantaneous when we do it. So there's no stress, no suffrage, none of that. But still, if you you name the animals and you build that emotional attachment, that makes you human when you have those emotions. I get it. I would feel that way too if I named my cows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's rule
Uh,
number one. Stop naming them.
yeah. But I approach it with, I mean, I'll kill for, farms with 200 head of cattle, and those ranchers view it differently than, you go to a little homestead and it's a 4-H program and the kids have, bottle fed them. And so I always approach it very thoughtfully, and, I understand the emotions at play.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're tied to your food, you feel it. We're supposed to be tied to our food. That's kind of why I think this whole movement with people starting little homesteads is happening. It's what we're meant to do.
Well, I agree. And when you, I don't know if personalize is the word, but when you just go to the grocery store and buy meat, you're not near as appreciative of what went into that and the life that was given. But by golly,
Yeah.
when, we named our first cow, our very first cow, we named him, well, we named them all, but I mean, when we butchered Mocha, I was so attached and so stupid that I wrote Mocha's heart on the baggie that had Mocha's heart in it and put little tears on it and pour it. I mean, everybody enjoyed the heart. I couldn't eat Mocha's heart. I couldn't do it, but that's just stupid. You have to
Yeah.
don't do that, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll go, provide service at a farm, and they have 10 pigs, and they still have some leftovers from the year before, so they'll hand me, packages of pork chops,
Yeah.
hand wrapped. A lot of times they'll do the cut and grind themselves. And yeah, the other day, this was actually a week ago, and one I can't remember the name is George, and one it was Rambo. There was names and all the food. I was like, oh, that's weird.
Well, sometimes
Yeah.
it's nice to name them too, especially if you have different breeds, because you want to
Yep.
know in the end, which did we like better, or
Yep.
yeah. And some are so mean that I don't know, maybe there's that vindictive side. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
It's
not
interesting to
humans. I mean,
see, like,
sometimes the
yeah.
animals are so mean, you're glad to see them go.
Yeah. It's interesting to see, like, you have an animal alive in a pen and then you have a steak cooked on a plate, and that whole process, that's the whole supply
Mhm.
chain process, the whole manufacture process. At what point does your brain recognize it as food,
Mhm.
and not a life? And it's different for everybody. And when you're involved, particularly people that, haven't grown up growing their own food or raising their own livestock, you get involved with it, it changes over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
When the hide is off and it's hanging, do you see it as a cow still, or do you see it as beef? As a so it's yeah.
Steaks and roasts and hamburger. I know
Yeah.
for us, one thing that I really appreciate is with our chickens, I love knowing that granted we do order them in as chicks, but once they're here, they've never left our place. I know what they were fed, I know how they were
Yeah.
treated, I know how they were processed, I know how clean we keep everything, and how and there's something to that, to the whole slow food process. So well, Nick,
Yeah.
it's been nice talking to you. I think your service is definitely one that I can't see automation taking out your service, so it's
Right.
good to have the mobile slaughter units out there and ready to serve the folks in the area. And it's really interesting that you service the whole state. I think that's definitely a need. So we appreciate it. And it was good talking to you and learning about what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. You have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.